One of the things I had to learn was about the house being a part of Barb. I had no idea that, and this was something I learned from Jim Dobson's book, What Wives Wish Their Husbands Knew About Women. It's a fabulous book. I didn't have any clue that the house had anything to do with you. How'd that come about?
I couldn't put a name on it either, but I know that we had a lot of arguments over Muffet, our red Cocker Spaniel, being up on the red velvet chair. And I would ask Chuck, please don't let Muffet get up on the red velvet chair. And I knew that I would have to clean it off, but I didn't realize that that chair was me, too, and that it was a reflection of who I was. And that's why I was so upset about it. But I did know I thought he loved the dog more than he loved me.
No, I loved the dog more than I loved the chair.
I know, but I didn't. I was interpreting it the other way.
Didn't know you were involved with the chair. Yeah, that's it.
And so we would say that the home is the extension of a woman's personality, just like work is the extension of a man's personality. And so that when a man's work is not going well, he's not going so well. And all of us women who have ever gone through that with our husbands know what that's like. But on the other hand, a fella can tear the kitchen apart and leave it that way for 3-4 years, you know, because they're busy working. And not even, we know that we feel utter confusion. We know that we're just even kind of ashamed about it. But never realize it is because it's an extension of who we are. And so when a man wants to decorate the house, and particularly when we were younger, any man who decorated a house usually decorated it, or a room, in tans and browns. And nobody wanted to go into that room. You know, didn't spend any time in the living room because he decorated it. I mean, he had to have one room to decorate, didn't he? And see, I decorate with a lot of color. I'm wearing navy today, but that's only because Chuck felt that red was too intense for television, right? And I wear mostly red, and I decorate a lot with red in the house. And if I don't decorate with red, I use roses. I put rose and rust together, and just to have some color. And I like to have a light background on the walls, and a light background on the wallpaper for the most part. But when we moved into a home when we were young marrieds, it was an old-fashioned home, and I don't know if you have them down here, but a lot of the older homes in the Seattle area where would be one room was the living room and dining room, and then every room opens off of that large room. So we got to paint it when we rented it and worked some of our rent off. And I wanted to have it off-white, and Chuck just thought that was stupid.
Not stupid.
Well,
I couldn't imagine anything more boring to have everything white. When I was on the farm, we'd have different colors and kind of...
anything that was left over.
Whatever was left over, yeah. But it was usually a color of some kind. It wasn't just white.
I know.
Yeah.
But I did get to have white woodwork, but these are the colors that Chuck picked. We didn't understand what submission was, and we're going to get to that later. I know you can hardly wait. But I felt like I had to do what Chuck thought. And so we walked into this great big room, and he picked the brightest harvest gold that you ever saw.
Reminded me of God's sunset.
Yes.
Kind of just beautiful.
And to the left was quite a large bedroom, and both of our kids were little at the time, and they slept in that room. And it was a bright, bright spring pink.
We had a girl, and that's what you do, pink room.
Uh-huh. And then you went into the next room, which was the bathroom. You could enter it off that bedroom or from the living room, and it was a bright, bright blue.
Sky reminded me of God's sky.
Yes, and the kitchen was the same color, mm-hmm. And I'm not even into blue that much. And then at the end of this harvest gold living room was the brightest apple green bedroom you ever saw in your life.
Kind of a nature, God's nature.
So I thought I was going to die living in that house because, see, it was supposed to reflect me. We had gotten some bright yellow sheets for our wedding. That was when colored sheets first came in the olden days, and I did make those into drapes. so that I could pretty much have a solid color in there, but it just was not me. And I would rather have the light and bright effect and then have colors in the furniture and in the pillows and that kind of thing. Well, also, we believe that a man tends to be defined by his role in his life, by his work. And so that when Chuck introduces himself, or any of you guys introduce yourself, you say, I am Chuck Snyder, and I'm in advertising in Seattle. And then you just go on to say what your work is. You identify yourself by your work. But if I were going to introduce myself, I would say I'm Barb Snyder, and I'm married to Chuck Snyder. We have 3 children. 2 of our children were born to us, and they're 34 and 37 now, and we adopted Debbie when she was a 34-year adult. And she came to live with us when she became such a good friend of our daughters, and then one day I said to Chuck, what would you think of adopting Debbie? And he thought it was a great idea because her parents were both gone. And every young person has to really belong somewhere. And so we were going to tell our kids about it or ask them about it. And before we could, our son turned to Debbie at the breakfast table. We were on vacation, and he said, Debbie, why don't you let us adopt you? And so we knew it was from the Lord. And so she calls herself the firstborn just to get Tim's goat, because she's 38 now, I think. She's really older than we've been married, but it's really interesting how you can learn to love an adult child and feel like they're your very own. So I would introduce myself with my relationship. So once again, you see that we identify ourselves with our relationships and with our goals. In the home, when Chuck goes to the cupboard to see if there's, what we call picking up sometimes at night. For those of you who are in your 50s and later, you know what that's like. You don't have kids at home anymore, you're both tired, and so you don't know, don't cook dinner, and either you go out or you pick up. So if Chuck goes to the cupboard and finds that he's out of his favorite chili, that he would want to have, I feel responsible. I just instinctively know that it is my job to keep food in the cupboards. If clothes aren't washed or if clothes aren't in his drawer, it's my responsibility. He doesn't feel you've never gone down and put in a load of underwear. In 37 years, you've never.
I put in a load of garage rags, I remember one time. That they came out better, but no, it wouldn't occur to me to do that.
Yeah.
And if I got out of something, find something, go buy something, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You've done that. When he bought the advertising agency from another fella, he wanted me to come and work for him. And so I did, and it was really hard to get everything done, and so I told him just to be creative. Just go to the sewing room where I had the ironing board up and look in a basket. It may not be in his drawer, but it's probably going to be in the basket. Even the world, I use the word secular, which when I say that, I mean not in a church situation. This gal, Holly Atkinson, wrote Women in Fatigue. See, I don't think it's wrong for women to work. I think it's perfectly fine if that's what you think the Lord wants you to do. But every woman that works will at least double her work, because we will be working and instinctively know it's our job to keep up the house. So this is what this gal says. When a man comes home tired from work and finds dishes piled up in the sink and children's toys all over the living room floor, he might or might not clean up. But if he chooses to ignore the mess and put up his feet, he's unlikely to feel guilty or to feel he's denying a part of his own identity. Many women, on the other hand, end up scrubbing the kitchen floor at 11 p.m. after everyone else has gone to bed, even if they have a business breakfast at 7:30 a.m. Men don't internalize housework as not involved with their self-concept. Even fairly progressive women will praise their husbands for helping with the housework, implying it's actually the world's primary responsibility. One woman said to me that the only thing the women's movement has earned women is the right to be perpetually tired. And I think that's true. And I teach everywhere I can, if at all possible, for the mother not to go out and work, because you will double your work. And our daughter-in-law took a job where she's in charge of before and after school care at a Christian school, and so she could come home in the middle of the day. But it's a big group, and she has to staff it, and she has other work to do. And she said, oh, I'm just so tired, and I just need someone to do the wash, and someone, And I said, it seems to me someone you know very well has written a book about how you double your work if you go to work. And she said, no, you triple it. Because it's just so hard to meet everybody's needs, and that's what moms are for. We have to meet the needs of our family. And so in this day and age, many, many men will say to their wives, you have not done your part. You haven't earned a cent since we've been married. See, the Lord never gave the woman the responsibility to work. He gave it to the man to support the family. In 1 Timothy 5:14, it says, therefore I want the younger widows to get married, bear children, keep house, and give the enemy no occasion for reproach. Well, the word keep house in the Greek means absolute ruler. It's the Greek word that we get our word despot from. See, the Bible teaches that we as women are in charge of our home. So if you're working and your home is going to pot, see, then I don't think that you're doing what the Lord wants you to do. I think that we are here to be a support for our husband. I know we are here to be a support. 1 Corinthians 11 says that man was not created for woman. Woman was created for the man. And I really do believe that I am to be Chuck's support. But I'm happiest in that role. I don't know, maybe if there's another woman who is a driver like you are, she wouldn't be as happy in that role, but I certainly am. Another thing that happens is that what you men wear reflects on your wife. There's no woman that any woman is going to say when she sees a man dressed wrong, she should have told him. She should have taken care of that. See. I understand that Billy Graham's wife on the French Riviera, she saw this man coming down the beach in street shoes, black socks, shorts, and old hat, and she hid because she didn't want anybody to know he was hers. And I can remember it was hard to teach Chuck, when you wear tennis shoes, you wear white socks. And, to get them dressed right, because it's a reflection of me. And I think that's why if you didn't have the right tie on or... See, the thing that happens with Chuck is that if I ever pick out anything, he will wear that to death, wear it forever. And so if he does try something new, you don't always pick out the right thing.
I give her 10 minutes a year to go shopping, 10 to 12 minutes, because I'm not going to spend my sunset years trying on stuff. And so I really put on anything she brings home. She my size. Just bring it home and I'll put it on and wear it. But I might as well just wear the whole same thing every day. Why would you want to change?
I know. And I don't have any trouble taking things back. In fact, one of the ways I taught our daughter to shop is if you see it and you think you want it, buy it, because it's not going to be there when you go back. Then if you get home, then you can make up your mind whether you really want it or not and take it back if you don't.
This is something I had to learn, and I think most of you men, again, don't nail us to the wall on... We're not saying women are always this way, men are always this way. We're saying these are tendencies, and if you're different, you're not weird, you're not funny, you are just different, and that it's okay to do that. But because most of the people fit our molds, so that's why we kind of go with the tendencies, and I had to be taught about the third party. I had to have somebody come into my life that said, this is why Barb does not want you in the decorating. And we do not believe, and some of you will object to this, we do not believe that the man has anything to do with the decorating of the home. He cannot choose the furniture, he cannot choose the colors, the rug, where you live, what it looks like. He's not into that. I mean, it shouldn't be, in my opinion. The only time there are some exceptions. We have a little form, if you want to pick one out. It says, I, then the wife's name, solemnly swear that I have given my husband permission to decorate the house, and she signs it. That is the only thing we accept as far as being involved in that. because that's, no matter whether she's in the workplace or not, she has an identification. I had to find that out. To me, gutters, now you don't have any gutters down here probably because it doesn't rain ever, but up in Seattle we have gutters, and Barb wants me to clean them out. They get leaves in them. From my standpoint, I say we just let them fill up once, and then everything else is going to go over the top. You know, why would I want to clean them every year? But she wants them clean for some reason because she feels stuffed up, I guess, if the gutters are stuffed up. We have moss up there in Washington, and all these little moss families out there on our patio, and she wants me to destroy them, and I feel bad about that, and didn't realize that she felt green when the patio was green. So this, again, something I had to be taught.
Well, you're going to step on it and bring it in on the cream-colored carpet.
It's just a carpet, you just wipe it up, you know. If the faucet's leaking up in Seattle, it's not a big deal, so we lose a couple gallons a month. Who cares? Nobody cares except Barb. And so I have to put the little washer in. One of the ways that helped me is to put a goal list on the refrigerator. I had Barb make a goal list because her top 10 never get on my top 30. I mean, it just didn't even occur to me that the leaves and stuff are important. I say wait till February, clean them all up at once. And we have a lot of leafing trees, and she'll hear every one. There's a leaf, go out and rake it up, you know. I don't need that. So these goal lists, and just right on, and then, you know, a lot of gals have the, you know, we say something about nagging, and that's horrible. They're not nags. What they're doing is reminding us once in a while. And I have known husbands, and I've done it myself. I was going to refinish all the doors on our cabinets. And so it was wonderful. Barb was all for that. So I took all the doors down and stripped them, and then I got busy. And it took me a while to get them back up. I may have wanted to just do it door by door. Some men will lay the carpet but never quite get the molding up. Some people tear out a wall but never quite get it finished. And I know that shocks you to think that there are people like that, but that once in a while there are.
Can I read this about nagging?
Okay, nagging. Yeah.
This it goes back to this "You Just Don't Understand" book by Deborah Tannen. And let me read you the paragraph. Now remember, men are into one-upsmanship, and women are into intimacy and connection. Men are into opposition type of thing too. Okay, women have been labeled nags may result from the interplay of men's and women's styles, whereby many women are inclined to do what is asked of them, and many men are inclined to resist even the slightest hint that anyone, especially a woman, is telling them what to do. A woman will be inclined to repeat a request that doesn't get a response because she's convinced that her husband would do what she asked if he only understood that she really wanted him to do it. But a man who wants to avoid feeling that he is following orders may instinctively wait before doing what she asks in order to imagine that he's doing it of his own free will. Nagging is the result because each time she repeats the request, he puts off fulfilling it again.
We sound like beasts, don't we? We're just awful.
Well, you're not relational.
Is that what it is?
See, and Gary Smalley was Chuck's third party, and there was a time that I said to Gary, why do I have to cry before Chuck hears me? And he said, it's because he's trained you that way. Well, we were having lunch, and Chuck slid right off the chair under the table. And he said, I knew it's going to be my fault.
Yeah.
And Gary said, you better believe it's going to be your fault because, see, men are so goal-oriented, you are into the goal. And, see, what the Lord tells you to do, how the Lord tells you to submit in your role, is all relational things. See, it is loving your wife, giving up your life for your wife, nourishing and cherishing. Don't embitter. Don't keep on doing what you're doing. That makes your wife mad. See, you're given directions on how to have a good relationship. We're given directions on how to make you feel good while you're doing it. See, and so what the roles are given so that I can love Chuck in the way that he needs to be loved, and vice versa. But anyway, because you're into goals, you do make more mistakes, and I think that's just the way it is.
The way it is, huh?
Yeah.
And I think this building up is really important, because what happens when you go over for dinner at the neighbor's, and the neighbor wife has a chair that squeaks, and you say, "Oh, she says, boy, we've had this for 10 years," and you say, "Oh, that's no problem. Let's get a little steel wool and you fix it." And what do you get from the neighbor's wife? "You are so wonderful, talented, gifted." When she looks at the wife, say, "It must be so wonderful to have a husband like that." And what is the best thing that you can expect at home? It's about time. I mean, that's the best thing you can imagine to get. So it's important that you praise us for doing this. Now, sometimes, ladies, you'd have to be creative. Let's say you have a leaky faucet. Now, your husband's sitting right here. He's not going to remember. He's not in details anyway. So here's what you do. If you have the leaky faucet, he's there at the table reading the paper. You say to him, "Honey, you worked so hard. Don't worry about the faucet. I'm going to fix it myself. Don't worry about it at all." Okay? And so you go out in the garage. Now, you see, this takes creativity now. You know how to do a faucet. It's just this. You don't need to do that. He should do that. You go out in the garage and you get a chisel. And you get one of those big hammers and maybe a crowbar. And you come back in and you take that chisel and you start hitting careful you don't wreck it. I mean, just down underneath you can hit it a little bit. And pretty soon he's going to put his paper down and say, "What in the world are you doing over there?" And he'll come over and, oh no, he'll go out in the garage, get the crescent wrench and the little grommet and the screwdriver and fix the thing for you. Now comes the creativity. What you have to say is, "Oh, you're so wonderful. You're so talented to know how I didn't, poor little me, I didn't know how to," see, I have to lie a little bit. But you get the faucet fixed. See, that's all you want in the first place, right? Okay, that's just a little hint. Once in a while, and again, these are tendencies, women and men have differences in handling money. Sometimes the woman looks like the spender. She gets shoes and some skirts and her hair done, and it looks like she's got a lot of things going. And a man just buys one or two things during the year. RV maybe, maybe an airplane, a boat, or just one thing. In fact, one of the Seahawk kids took me out to lunch one time, wanted to complain about his spendthrift wife. She was always spend. And I said, "Well, what have you bought?" "Just one thing, $800 weight set." I mean, it would have taken her 40 years to get up to $800 because he didn't have any concept that he was really the one spending most of the dollars.
Larry Burkett says that too.
Oh, does he?
Mm-hmm.
The way to solve this is just set a figure that you're not going to ever, as a wife and husband, never spend over that figure without the permission and doing it as a team. And I suggest like $10,000. Anything over $10,000, you check with your wife to see if she's for it. Now, Barb, I think would probably go for about 15. So just split the difference. That's all you have to do there, and go on that. What we do is put all income in one pot. We recommend this highly. If you're both working, you get insurance bonuses or whatever. You get it all in one pot. And then out of that, you take an equal amount and put it into a separate bank, separate checking account as a personal fund. So many times men will use budgets to beat their wife, and and I know it sounds like we're awful, doesn't it? But they'll put all the money in there, and he'll divide it all right. Here's some money for food, here's some money for dresses, here's some money for the kids, and then here's some money for golf, here's some money for, food is not recreation to the woman, it's something she has to have. And so many times his playthings come out of that too, and her necessities. So if you take out equal amounts and then you put them over here, and you're not really accountable to each other how you spend that. Barb can go out and have her hair done. I can go out and play golf or something. Both of us have discretionary money, and that has just really helped us a lot. And it's really important to involve your kids in the bill paying. So oftentimes they see the plastic and they never see us, paying the bills at midnight. We divided, when we started out, our household into wants and needs. And I was in business, and so I needed desperately to make a living. God asked me to make a living for Barb. I needed a new camera because I'm in advertising, so I needed that. Barb wanted a new rug, and I needed a new recorder, and Barb she wanted some linoleum. And so we divided that up, and it worked out really good, didn't it?
Yeah. It was 9 years before I wanted the rug I wanted. We moved into this house after the brightly colored one. We moved into, well, we bought a house. And it had a cotton carpet laid wall to wall. I don't know why they ever did that. And at one time it was champagne colored. And the walkways now were all gunmetal gray. And so Chuck was, I'd say, this is what I'd like to have this. And he'd say, well, I really need this for the business. But it's for you, because he's earning a living for me. It was really for me. But somehow I didn't ever feel like it was for me. And that went on for 9 years. Every time we'd just get enough money to get the carpet, he'd think up some new thing. Well, we told you that Chuck was impulsive. So one of his things was he just had to have this little organ that you could, what was it called, an optic organ?
Yeah, but I'd go do commercials.
I know.
Singing commercials.
Yeah.
It was a need I had.
It was a need that you had. That
for the business.
That he used
that
once.
God asked me to kind of support
Yes.
you.
Yes. And see, being impulsive, I knew that he had this big idea right now, and that it would be like the exercise house. It might not be used. And so then I would forego, and it did take 9 years. It wasn't until, no, we didn't know Gary then. You got me my rug before we knew Gary Smalley. Yeah. That was neat, okay?
We'd like to talk now about probably the hardest area of our relationship, and that is how to deal with anger and conflict in a marriage. And as we do, we're not formal counselors. All we are is people that have made mistakes. I have made mistakes, and now I can get together and tell other people kind of how to work around it. But you really have to filter this through your life before it becomes real to somebody else. And this is a tough area. Even today, my instant reaction is going to be, well, why don't you tell them a little bit about this, because I think it's really important how we deal in conflict.
Now you're going to see what I'm like.
I don't want to give them the punchline before you get to do your thing.
Okay. This is about expressive and non-expressive people. This isn't a man-woman thing. You can be expressive as a man and non-expressive as a woman, and vice versa. This isn't either when you're just talking, just enjoying each other, everything's real smooth. It can be. I mean, there are quieter people, of course, but this is when there's a conflict. You're having a conflict. Emotions arise, and Chuck withdraws, and I want to pursue, and
attack.
This is what it feels like. He would say to me, remember when you attacked me, when you stuck the knife in, turned it, and blood dripped down my front. And I thought, when did I ever do that? But it was his perception of what was going. It didn't help me. I mean, I didn't like you to feel that way. But if I, because he would withdraw, because he would show disapproval if I ever said anything that he didn't like, I would say to him, will you punish me if I tell you how I really feel? And see, he said, well, I don't want to punish you. And I said, I don't want to attack you either, but that's the way we were perceiving it.
But you felt punished when I got silent.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't I hit you or anything?
No.
I got silent, and then I felt attacked when you would attack.
Well, it's when I would forcefully state my opinion. That was attack.
Yeah, but you forcefully stated it right here. Here's your opinion. I can't get away from you. You're saying, how do you feel? I don't know. How do you feel? I can't get away. Right. It feels like attack. I want to teach you about not letting the sun go down in your anger. Well, I'll teach you here. What Chuck got out of it, I try to get everything settled. You know how you do. Before you go to bed at night, you want to have everything settled. Well, it's a real truth that a non-expressive person may be the one getting angry first. But you say, why are you angry? And they say, I don't know. Well, I thought, there he goes again. He just doesn't want me to say anything. He just doesn't want to talk about it, and he's just trying to withdraw. And so
but I would pursue, because after all, I wanted to be a godly woman, and I knew we had to get this thing settled before we went to bed. Well, don't let the sun go down on your anger. The word for anger means a settled state of the mind with a view to getting revenge. See, it's the type of anger that you have when you're so mad that you're going shopping the next day. Or you're so mad that you just watch, I am never going to fix that thing. And then you all accuse her of nagging and that kind of thing. It is not the emotion of frustration or even, what we call anger. It's the type of anger that you're going to get even with the person. So that when I would try to settle things at night with Chuck, he'd say, you're just going to kill me. You are just killing me. And then we would get it worked out, and he would say afterwards, this is what he'd say, communication in conflict is just horrible. It's like vomiting. I hate to get to it, but I do feel better when it's over. But see, if you've got a commitment to talk, you can go to sleep without having things completely settled, because you know that you're so committed to each other that you will settle them. And that you're not the kind of angry at each other that you're going to get them the next day. It is that you will work this out, I don't like you right now, but I'm completely committed to you.
And so when you go to bed, we have a king-size bed. Sometimes I'm leaning over one side, she's leaning over the other. We don't say anything. We just reach out tentatively and kind of touch the other person that says, I'm committed, I don't like you real well, we will work it out. And that's what that little touch does. And you don't have to talk about it right then, because I can't talk about it right then.
Chuck can barely touch me, but I pat him like that.
Well, my finger gets froze. Frozen. Frostbite there.
Okay. This is how we like to describe the way we used to talk during a conflict, and we heard this story from a gal named Betty Coble, and I don't know where Betty Coble got it, but that communication is like a game of tennis. You have to have the balls go back and forth over the net in order to have a game, just like you have to have sentences go back and forth in order to have communication. So I would send a sentence over to Chuck and it wouldn't come back. And then I'd send another sentence over to Chuck and it wouldn't come back. And then I'd send another sentence over, and pretty soon I'm hitting those sentences over as hard as I can trying to get a response. And he said he'd feebly stick out his racket, and he would, and it would just kind of float up to the net. And it's so softly that I could run up to the net and smash it right down his throat. And that's what I would do. The minute I got something out of his mouth, then I thought it was usually wrong. He'd perceived it wrong, so then I had to tell him why he was wrong, and then I sent him right back inside of himself, hardly ever to emerge again. So I was closing him down when he really needed to have time and space.
And that's something she thought, again, I was lying. When I said, I don't know how I feel, she said, of course you do. You're the one that's angry. And she, of course you feel like that. And so she would get...
Well, it's impossible for someone to be angry and not know why.
Right, I agree. But I didn't know how I felt. She thought I was lying. And so I would give her anger. I would get angry. It's the only way I could keep her at arm, subconscious. I'm not out to hurt her. I love her. But I would get angry for self-preservation. And so we learned that she had to give me some time. She wants to talk about right this minute, be friends again. She's more godly than I am on that. I can't talk about it right now, but I have to give her hope. I have to say, how about Thursday night? Let's have a date, and we'll talk about it. And so a lot of times I'll go out to breakfast with myself the next morning. I'll take a piece of paper and I'll say, what in the world? Why did I? Oh, okay. And then I'll put 3 little feelings down. And then at our date on Thursday, I will present feeling number 1. I've got 3, and I can talk now. People like me talk a little slower, and we kind of look up at the ceiling, and Barb just, come on, gets this thing done. So at the date, I present feeling number 1. I've got 3 feelings, feeling number 1, and she clomps all over it, smashes it and cuts it up and crunches it, and, and...
That's right.
Now, do you think she's going to get feeling 2 and 3? Hey, why would I go through that abuse? I mean, so I've got angry before. Now I lie. I say, oh, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Oh, just fine. Yeah, no problem. Hey, I'm stuffing 2 live feelings right down here. And people with my personality, we stuff 2 from today and 2 from last Thursday and 2 from last year and 2 for before we were dating. I mean, we just get all these things up. And then what will happen, I get all this stuff in my little garbage pit, and it starts getting gas and comes up here, and bang, I'm angry over burnt toast or something.
And it doesn't even fit the situation that you're
But
angry.
it's because I'm always stuffing here. So what Barb has to do is to speak a strange language. So all of those it's not a man-woman now. This is just personality. I have some cue cards for you because these words would never occur to you in a conflict situation. So I have cue cards to Barb, and so she has to read them. Now we have a conflict. Okay, I bring out my cue card. She has to read this. She says, my, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Then another one says, my, what else do you feel? You know, she's got to read that. Then it wouldn't even occur to her to say those words of how do you feel, tell me more, because she knows how I should feel, how could I feel, you know, and it just shuts me down. So I need to get all my little feelings out before you start evaluating.
Yeah. Well, see, one of the reasons I wanted to evaluate is we told you we took this Taylor-Johnson temperament test. Well, Chuck is just a little bit subjective. Subjective people, that's subjective versus objective. Subjective people read in and usually come up with the most negative thing. How would you explain it?
One of the word pictures we have is that I've been wrestling too many extra pounds for too long, but I still like cheese melted in the microwave. It has a different flavor. And so a few years ago I cut a piece of cheese, and Barb said, now I'm subjective, boy, that's a big piece of cheese. Now what I heard her say with my little subjective mind, listen, chubby, you don't need all that cheese. That's exactly what I heard her say. And what she swears she would said was, it won't melt real well.
That's right.
Because it's too big to melt. It'll
It'll be burned
edges.
on the edges and won't be clear melted like he likes it.
So I assumed she was on me. She's not on me, but I just assumed that she was on me again.
So he wrapped that.
Well, of course, I'm not going to take that kind of abuse.
Threw it back into the
refrigerator.
refrigerator.
So a lot of times we subjective people will read the negative, come up with the wrong answer, and hang and quarter our mate before, and they're innocent. They're absolutely innocent.
That's right.
Yeah, right. Most of the time.
Well, I found myself defending a position that I never took in the first place, sounding guiltier and guiltier every time I denied it, see. And so we just, I just didn't understand. So I thought, why should we talk about something that wasn't true? Why should I let him get the 3 points out that were about things that I didn't do, think, feel, or ever thought of? And besides, he was always giving them to me in his language, in his little words. And I knew I'd never talk like that. So it took years to figure this out. But in one of the courses that I took from Kay Arthur, something that she wrote, there was a poem that she read, and I don't remember which. It was from Lord Heal My Hurts, and she said it was a missionary gal who wrote it, but it's about being subjective. And she was talking about having a controlled mind. So I copied it down. I want to read it. It was just a thought that came one day intruding in my mind. Suppose he doesn't love you now and time has changed his mind. He used to look into your eyes and tell you you were pretty, but lately it's as if he looks and thinks, my, what a pity. Now see, she's just thinking all this. Oh dear, she said, I hadn't noticed that, but it could sure be true. My eyes are slightly far apart and now there's wrinkles too. Well, you never were a stunner, but he shouldn't be unkind. After all, you can't help it if you're not Julia Klein. Ah, Julia, yes, she's quite a gal. I've always been impressed. She has so many talents. She's always nicely dressed. She's tall and slender, lucky gal. That's what I've always wanted. I'll bet she works out every day, rain or shine, undaunted. All her kids all playing instruments. She makes her husband suits, and she always knows the answers to Trivial Pursuit. I'll bet that's what he'd like, someone more like her. Of course, he'd never let it out because it would cause quite a stir. Well, that's the way he feels, the bum. I won't stand in his way. He's not exactly Mr. Great himself. I'm here to say he doesn't understand my needs. He leaves his clothes around. The skinflint wouldn't waste a dime. You see, his faults abound. So, if he doesn't love me, it's quite all right. He can go and find another, and I'll tell him so tonight. See, that's all in the mind. Not one thing happened. And as younger marrieds, this was happening to us a lot, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And Chuck had some insecurities, and I thought, brother, I didn't know what to do. We brought our folks back to the East Coast. We were stationed in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, before we came down to Fort Bragg to spend the rest of the 2 years that we were in the service. So we wanted to take our folks, both sets, to Washington, D.C., and to see Philadelphia, and then drive up to Long Branch so they could see where we lived in Staten Island on up to Boston. Well, we rented an RV, but it was like on the back of a truck, a Dodge, one of those things. And the door wouldn't open properly, and I remember knocking on the door from the inside, and Chuck whirled around and said really angry, "What?" Well, of course, this was in front of the folks. Well, it was all sorts of things that I had done that he had never told me about. 11 years went by.
I think it was because we had both sets of folks in the back of an RV, and the reason we did that is so they'd get up and have coffee, and as we were traveling along, and it was about 95 foot long, and I'd never driven one before, and Barb kept saying as we were on the turnpike, would you stop, like the
we
antique
never
shop
stopped
or
at
something?
one antique shop.
Well, I had some guy on my tail all the time.
Always.
I couldn't do that. So there was some tension involved. We got into Boston just as 100,000 people broke a rock concert and were coming with their beer cakes
Old
and
Boston,
things.
and with that RV,
And
we
that's
didn't know.
a windy place anyway.
Yeah.
So there was a slight bit of tension, plus the 11 years of
Yeah.
stuff,
But I can't remember when we took that trip, but we did go 11 years. I thought I was the most perfect thing that ever walked the face of the earth, because Chuck didn't tell me a thing that I did wrong because he hated conflict so much. And so it was at, we were talking about this with Dick and Char last night. It was at a time after a retreat like this. We had stopped for coffee with friends. Chuck was telling a story. I changed it or interrupted him for the last time he could stand. And he never even got mad at me at home, but here he was with these friends showing anger to me.
Nobody noticed.
Every
Not
woman
one.
at that table knew.
Well, it's because you probably told her, but not because
Because we
I
pick
thought I was
up
kind of
stuff
cool.
like
I
that.
was
You
real
guys
cool.
don't. No, your body was there, but you were nowhere around.
Well,
And we went out 20 years later with this couple, and I was telling this story, and she said, I remember exactly when it happened, and she knew everything about it. But it's just that when you see what Chuck wants, he wants to be a peacekeeper. He wants peace so bad that he thinks that if he lets it go, that we'll all both forget it and everything will be fine.
when we came into the marriage, my father and my church said anger is a sin. I don't know if you ever said that, but that's the impression I got. We do not have waves in this family. We do not have conflict. We are always friends. And Barb's family threw things at each other once in a while. And so when we came together in a marriage, if we had a conflict, I thought we'd really failed. Barb thought we'd really succeeded.
That's right.
And so we just kind of passed in the night on that.
Mm-hmm. So that when, if you keep stuff in like that, then you get to a place where, see, love accepts a person just because they're precious in the sight of the Lord. And you always feel safe with someone who loves you. But I wasn't feeling safe with Chuck anymore. I mean, it was getting worse and worse. We went out to dinner with his folks. We would go to this chicken dinner inn, and we'd have a room for the so the little kids could get up and run around. And Chuck's mother said, shall we pray out loud or shall we pray silently? And at the very minute he said silently, I said out loud. Well, he was mad at me for the rest of the afternoon. But see, that was nothing. I thought, what on earth is he mad over that for? Just because we have a different... But see, he was just carrying a whole bunch of things inside that he hadn't let out. We, he thinks that he didn't get to say, complete things or really communicate, but we went out, we've been married 18 years. Chuck gave me my first dinner ring. First ring he'd given me after we got engaged, see. So he invited me out to dinner. And I thought, I am going to just let him say anything. I'm going to play the part of a Southern belle. And I'm just going to look in his eyes, and I'm just going to say yes to everything and just enjoy him and laugh at his jokes and not give any opinions. And we went out like that, and I did that. And he got up from the table, and he said, "We have really communicated." I hadn't said a word all evening.
First time I'd ever completed a thought in 18 years at all. It's kind of neat. I really enjoyed that.
That's true. We'll tell you about quick listening later, but before we knew about quick listening, Chuck would go out and he would have breakfast with himself and he would start thinking of what's wrong, why am I upset? And he would write down things. And Chuck loves to take me out to dinner, and I love to go too. But he would call up and say, "Can we go out and talk tonight?" He'd call from the office. So we got out there to talk, and he opened up this sheaf of papers so thick I thought, good grief, I'm going to be dead before I get out of here. And it was things that he had stored up for a long time. But the neat thing is that it was written on paper, and so that even if I did interrupt it, he didn't lose his train of thought.
But that was not my idea to do that. You created a crisis of saying, "Can we talk?" and what's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
That generated the list.
But see, if a woman would sit at the breakfast table with her husband, an expressive woman, and turn to him and say, "Can we talk?" that is a crisis. See, because, I think Chuck said something about it at the beginning. If a woman is talking about the relationship, she thinks it's all right. If a man isn't talking about the relationship, he thinks it's all right. See, so we just come at that so differently. All right. Proverbs 13:10 says, "By presumption comes much strife." And that's what the non-expressive does. That being a peacekeeper, they'll just keep the peace, assume they know what's wrong, won't talk about it, but in the end there's going to be a blow-up. So a peacekeeper goes like this, and then there's the blow-up. A peacemaker looks like they're causing war. See, Chuck used to say to me, "You just love to argue." Well, see, I didn't love to argue. I just loved to get it settled so that we could be back in fellowship again. And so it looks like peacemakers look like you're causing war. Now, Scripture doesn't say, "Blessed are the peacekeepers."
Didn't figure it would.
No, it wouldn't.
No.
It says, "Blessed are the peacemakers." That's right. Now, do I have it written down here? James 3:18, "The seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." Okay, so you have to be willing to cause a commotion, because the non-expressive is going to cause the commotion just by saying, "Can we talk?"
Must cause the commotion.
Well, the expressive must.
We'll never bring it up. And why would we?
I know it.
So you guys have to say, "Can we talk?" and then time out. And then that creates a crisis for us, and then we make our list. But if you guys never create the crisis, in other words, if you become stuffers, then it defeats the whole thing. Because we can't fit together.
But you feel angry when I create the crisis sometimes.
Yeah, I hate it. It's awful.
I know it.
But
you have to be willing to.
So I have to make that commitment to you. No, I don't want to. That's the last thing I do. So that's why I'm saying we will never probably get around to it unless you say, "Can we talk? How about Thursday? Trap us at breakfast," whatever.
Okay.
That's why but you must create it. It's not just if you do, it's must.
Okay, now, here's the thing. Remember when we talked about fear of failure? The man has this great fear of failure. This is the time in this type of situation where it really shows itself. And if, he just would persist in feeling that way and say, I'm not going to talk, we wouldn't have the relationship that we have today. But that's when he had to say, okay, this I hate it, but I will talk. Proverbs 18:13 covers the expressive person, and that is, he who speaks before he hears is to shame and folly. And so the Lord has us covered coming and going. There's another thing is that if you're going to be a peacemaker, you're going to have to realize that God is sovereign, that he rules over all, and that there are going to be things that people will say to you that, see, being a non-expressive, don't you think that you sometimes say things you don't really mean when I get you talking?
Well,
I mean, it's an emotion and you just start saying things.
Well, yeah, I haven't had time to get in touch with what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And if you press me too much,
Mm-hmm.
not only will it get you angry, but I'm going to say things I don't mean. I mean, I'm going to say hurtful things
Mm-hmm.
that I don't really mean, but boy, it just seems like I've got to have some space to figure out what's going on. And so that's awful hard for me to do, is when I'm not in touch with those feelings.
Yeah.
So I can't put right words to them.
And so we saw his anger growing through the years. And we couldn't understand. I couldn't understand. I said, I really think it's getting worse. Whenever we'd have a conflict, it seemed like he was getting angrier. But what happens if you don't get things out in the open? You're going to let your anger build. And Ephesians 4:31 says, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Well, bitterness is the root. And I think it's Hebrews 12:14 says not to let a root of bitterness get started, because it will defile many. So that if you, as non-expressive, never get out of your system what you're thinking, or what you're thinking wrongly, or or just don't say anything, then that root of bitterness is going to take hold, and then you're going to become an angry person. And it's not going to be just inside of you. It's going to just reach out to everybody around you, your kids, everybody. I mean, I have a friend who had let a root of bitterness get started, and she and her husband are now divorced because it wasn't taken care of. And it started a long time ago. We hear today so much about dysfunctional families and about enablers. Well, in my younger days, enablers were called people pleasers. See, Chuck came from a dysfunctional family because they would never let anger be shown. I came from a dysfunctional family because they let too much anger be shown. And so all of us really, really, really have come from dysfunctional families. Not necessarily as bad as somebody else. But, see, the thing is that you have to decide you are going to be who you are because of what you decide to be today. We thought we had a Leave It to Beaver family. Our daughter thought we had a Leave It to Beaver family. She followed the rules. She didn't think we had any rules. Our son was a strong-willed child, creative child. He always had a different idea, wanted to do things a different way. He was a little bit subjective growing up. He thought we were just horrible. Chuck's well known in the Seattle area, and Bev was the kind that couldn't wait until people found out that her dad was Chuck Snyder. Tim was the kind that didn't want people to know who his dad was, because he was afraid they'd like him just because of who his dad was rather than who he was. See, here you raise two kids in the same family, and they come out completely different. So Tim had a root of bitterness start, and it just spilled out all over the place. And it wasn't, when he was about 27 years old, now that's 10 years ago, he just decided that either this Christianity was going to work for him or it wasn't. And Chuck used to say, when he committed his life to the Lord 100%, he said, Lord, I'll even go to Africa. Or I don't want to go to Africa, but I'll even go. The way Tim said it was, Lord, send me the ticket. to the Lord, see. And that was his complete commitment to the Lord. But you see, you're not going to get rid of that root of bitterness unless you forgive. And that's why we've got all these people running around today who are not healed, who don't get better, because they're not willing to forgive what happened to them in the past. And we do decide today who we're going to be. And that's what I told Tim when he was 27 years old. You are exactly who you've decided to be. And somehow the Lord worked in his heart. And I remember shortly afterwards we went out to dinner, and Bev, our daughter, looked at Tim, and I guess he got up to leave the table. And Tim did this, and 7 weeks later met his wife and got married. See, so this was right after they were married. And Bev turned to his wife and says, "What's happened to the boy?" Because there was no chip on his shoulder anymore. And it was because he had so committed himself to the Lord that he had forgiven. Well, if you're bitter, you don't forgive.